If you have not taken your seats, if you'll find them at this time, we will get started. Is my voice projecting okay? Great. Uh-oh. Charlie will be up to correct me in a minute. Good morning. It's Women's History Month, and in spite of everything that's going on, we do have a lot to celebrate. This is the League of Women Voters of Orange County, and this is a special month for us. I'd like to welcome all of our guests who are with us today, as well as guests who are joining us online. I am Lee Rambo Kemp, first Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Orange County, and thank you so much for being with us. Today's event is being recorded and live streamed. It will also be available later on our League Facebook page and on our website, our Hot Topics website under Hot Topics. So do look for that. That's the pretty edited version. And if you have not already done so, please take a moment to silence or turn off your electronic devices. If you'll now join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to take this time to ask for a moment of silence to honor the legacy of our recently departed State Senator Geraldine Thompson. She was, for nearly 2 decades, a true champion of the people. Thank you. Well, yesterday kicked off the first round of our local elections, and some people are very happy with the outcomes. And we do want to congratulate all winners and those who also ran for office. That's very important. But there are more elections coming up, and we encourage you to not only vote yourselves, but encourage your friends, your family, your neighbors, whoever you run into, to please get out to vote. We will now go on to acknowledge all elected officials and any officially filed candidates who are running for office. So I'd like to invite any elected official who is here to come to the mic to my left, and please briefly introduce yourselves with your title, your name, and we please ask you for no speeches. And if the audience would please hold applause until after everyone has introduced themselves, we will be in good shape. Thank you.
This is first. Hi, my name is Eric Gray. I'm a candidate for Orange County Commission, District 4.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Vickers, and I am the Public Defender for Orange and Osceola County.
Hello, I'm Robin Dellinger. I'm from your next door neighbor. I'm a member of the school board in Seminole County.
Good afternoon. I'm Marty Sullivan, Commissioner for the City of Winter Park. Welcome to our event center.
Good morning. I'm Stephanie Vanos. I'm the school board member for Orange County, District 6. Good morning. I'm Monique Worrell. I'm your state attorney, and it's a pleasure to be here with you again.
Now that's an enthusiastic applause for everybody, including Monique. Now to acknowledge our sponsors. I'm pleased to acknowledge our bronze sponsor, the Honorable Cynthia McKinnon and her husband Alex. Our silver sponsors, Dave and Lynn Berelsman, and the voting voices, which include Charlie Williams, Lori and Richard Wack, and Michelle Levy. Our visionary sponsors, Jennifer and Phil Anderson, could not be here today. Jennifer has been very ill and is recovering, and please keep her in your prayers. If I could ask the sponsors to please stand so that we can give them a big round of applause for their support. In this US of A, the wealthiest of nations, there is a surge in the number of people who have become unsheltered. This trend may grow exponentially in the near future as the rate of poverty in the US is predicted to dramatically rise. And why is this such a big problem, especially in an economy where there are so many people who are celebrating their newfound wealth? Before I introduce our esteemed moderator and panelists, here are just a couple of facts to chew on. I have read stats that 60% of Americans, and probably more, live paycheck to paycheck, and they are one check away from poverty. Florida's current minimum wage is $13, but the living wage, what's needed to really live comfortably in this state, hovers around $22.43. According to the nonpartisan Florida Policy Institute, Florida's residents remain worse than the national average for households living below the poverty level, the median household income for families, the rate of residents who do not have health insurance. And data from the US Census Bureau's American Community Survey show that the current state policies in this state continue to exacerbate both the economic and racial inequality in this sunshine state. With that as a backdrop, we are here today to learn more about the new face of homelessness, what local leaders face in trying to help the homeless, and what all of us can do about it. We're pleased to have as our moderator for today's forum the President and CEO of the Central Florida Foundation, Mark Brewer. Mark began his career as a journalist, a reporter, and an anchor. He holds a business degree and a master's in public administration with a specialty in nonprofit management, and is a chartered advisor in philanthropy. He's also a very well-known national speaker on venture philanthropy strategies, philanthropy's role in America, and the independent sector's role in public policy. And in this community, we certainly know him as a master at building community partnerships that meet issues head-on and produce measurable results. Mark, in closing, also has the distinction of being named one of Orlando Business Journal's CEOs of the Year. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mark Brewer.
thank you very much. And let me tell you what an honor it is to be here. The League of Women Voters, in my mind, is one of a handful of organizations in America that have the distinction of keeping democracy together. The work the League of Women Voters does is critical to making the democracy work. So when they convene conversations like this, it's not only good for all of us, but it's good for everybody in the community and people who are not currently participating, but should be. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. Our topic today is complicated, and it also involves looking at things from different perspectives. And so I'm really honored to have three folks today, three panelists, who I think you're going to find not only important in the work they do, but I think you're going to find them very educational in helping you better understand the issues that Lee mentioned that we're all trying to deal with. So to start with, she serves as the CEO of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness and the Homeless Services Network of Central Florida. They facilitate homeless services, planning, and coordination across Osceola, Orange, and Seminole counties. She has worked with people experiencing homeless for her entire career, and in 2023, she was named a Central Floridian of the Year finalist by the Orlando Sentinel. Please help me welcome Martha R. She is the editor-in-chief of the Oviedo Community News, a working independent journalist and one of the founders of a journalism collaborative that you'll hear a little bit more today that's working on a set of stories that will help everyone better understand the law that is at the core of what we'll be talking about today. Please help me welcome Meghan Stokes. Meghan, you were sitting in the cheap seats.
That's what journalists do, they blend.
She is an associate director of the Samaritan Resource Center in East Orlando. She leads efforts to provide essential services, connect people to housing, and create pathways to long-term stability. She holds a degree in political economy from Columbia University, and in 2024, she was recognized as one of the 10 people who make Orlando a better place by the Orlando Sentinel. Please join me in welcoming Zeynep Portway. So I think you should know, first of all, you have two panelists today that are among the most important people in the strategy part of figuring things out. And Martha R. is the kind of point person that we all look to help in strategy design, also in collection of data and understanding how to get things done. She also drives most all of the federal funding that comes here for the broader picture of dealing with homelessness. And so I want to start with a question that's essentially, it's for all of you, but I'd love to start with you, Martha, on this one if I can. Through the years, we have seen a lot of people address homelessness, and this is just my opinion, but homelessness isn't really a problem, it's a dilemma, because it's ongoing. It's not a problem that you can snap your fingers and figure out a fix to. So I understand the frustration when we talk about homelessness, that people say, haven't we been working on that for a long time? And what's taken so long? And how come we haven't fixed this thing yet? Well, part of the reason is it's not a simple fix. It takes time, and it takes lots of people who are committed over a period of time to get this done. So tell us a little bit, Martha, about your work and how it intersects with this topic, but also about that long work period that we've been involved in and what that looks like going forward.
Thanks, Mark. Mark's already said a lot about what the Homeless Services Network and Central Florida Commission on Homelessness do, but we are kind of the lead in trying to get people into permanent housing, figure out what the barriers are, how do we make it so that more people are getting into permanent housing, and again, coordinating planning across the 3 counties, which includes working with jurisdictions as well as the nonprofits. And as Mark said, this is not a new issue. it has looked differently. It has looked very different in different decades, and there's reasons driving all of that. But for most kind of community members, they may not notice those changes. They just see people and they get frustrated that we're still working on this issue. Surprisingly, data is a new thing in this field. Social worky types, that's my family, I can talk about them, you can't. Social worky types, not real keen on data. Like, they just want to help people, they don't want to, like, have to count them. Why does that matter, right? So data is new. So for 30 plus years, strategies were kind of based on anecdote and what we thought might work. And it's really only been within the last 15, 20 years when we've had enough data to look at what does work, what interventions do work, and what's driving things and what makes things better. So that's a lot of our job, is now collecting data and then helping folks analyze that data to help drive our solutions.
Zeynep, let me jump to you for a minute. Zeynep's a hero because she and her team are on the street every day trying to find solutions for people, sometimes in crisis mode, sometimes in long-term strategies to help them become more independent. Zeynep, what's your take on this?
Go back to your original question.
Yeah, a little bit about what the work that you do intersects with the other things that we've talked about, and why this is such a long haul.
Well, I'll say, and thank you for having me, League of Women Voters. I've been in this homeless space, unlike Martha and some other people, since 2011 is when I started working in homeless services field with a brand new program in Seminole County. And I feel like, and I say this all the time, what we were talking about in 2011, we're still talking about the same issues today. And this is 14 years later, and it feels like there hasn't been any, other than more funding, thanks to Martha and HSN bringing more dollars into our area. I feel like there hasn't been any progress made in how to fix the problem. What we're seeing is just things getting worse out there because the numbers of homeless folks are growing. The numbers of families who are homeless are growing. And the long haul, I think, is housing, as Martha would, I've heard her say, housing is going to fix our homelessness problem. And that's where we're somehow getting stuck in building more housing or building more shelters or transitional living. It seems like that's where we're kind of at a standstill, and we have to kind of get through that roadblock.
Meghan, let me ask you this question about the Florida camping law that went into effect in January. I'm interested in the effect you think it's having on the homeless population in Florida. Do you have a take on that as a working journalist?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we've seen a number of effects. One big one was the point-in-time count that's done, and the effect the kind of chilling effect that it had in some cases where people, weren't so willing to be out and about, talking to the people who are there to help, but it really did affect them in that way. So I think that's one of the biggest impacts that we've seen since the ban has gone into effect.
So Martha, let me get you and Zeynep to talk a little bit about, let me start with you. What do you think this law is supposed to impact? What do you think that the people who pass the law believe the purpose of the law is?
At one level, for many of the people who are involved with the legislation, the intent was to pressure jurisdictions to do something. Like, the sense was local jurisdictions are not making anything happen. And they're just letting this problem proliferate. And so by putting a penalty on jurisdictions, it was supposed to inspire, encourage jurisdictions to create overnight sleeping accommodations for people. That was certainly one of the articulated purposes. Obviously, another purpose is just to make people less visible, and aligning visibility with success. And so that was a part of it.
And what's your sense of the future? Do you think any of this will happen because of the law or no?
Well, just based on what we've already seen, people are definitely hiding more. So yes, people are less visible. But the numbers are not necessarily going down. But if you can't find people when you're doing the counts, then it can appear that the numbers have gone down. But it doesn't, we anticipate kind of more of the same, none of which creates housing, creates shelter, creates any of the resources that people need so that we can actually bring our numbers down.
Zeynep, what's your feel about the future, where all this is going? Is this going to help at all?
No, it's definitely not going to help. I think, like Martha mentioned, the intent behind passing the law was probably to get something moving. On the positive side, I'm glad it's started a lot more conversations about the issue, and it's brought it back to the headlines. It's in the news now, you see it on TV, you see it in the newspaper a lot more than we did before, because it was kind of a forgotten issue. If it doesn't impact you, then you just forget about it. So I think in that sense, it's a good difference, but without having the resources to shelter people, it's not going to make a difference. What we hear from our clients is that they're nervous. Some of them, a group of clients that, I don't want to say where, somewhere near our organization where they camp in the woods, they've been moved 11 times. They have had to move from place to place 11 times. So think about packing up everything you own in a backpack, in a suitcase, in a shopping cart, and having to move 11 times through no fault of your own, but because someone made a phone call to 311 and complained that somebody was camping near their subdivision, near their business, whatever it was. Whether you were doing anything illegal, against the law, whatever, if you were just minding your own business, there are still people calling to say, hey, there's a homeless camp. There's a homeless camp. Go over there and give them services. Great, but I think people don't understand that there is no place for them to go, right? We can go and offer services, but we can't put them in a car and take them to a shelter bed that we know is guaranteed and it's open. So it's not helpful because it's really disruptive to people's lives that are human beings and living out there and trying to survive, honestly.
Martha, you know, it might help, especially the people in this room, to know that homeless faces are changing. Can you share your thoughts on what unsheltered people look like today, who they are, where they come from?
Yeah, the faces are definitely changing because what's really the takeaway, if you get nothing else out of this, the driver of our numbers is our housing market. It is not the change, it's not that the people are changing, but as the housing market gets tighter, the predictors of how many people are in your community will be homeless is how much of your rent's gone up and what's your vacancy rate. When the rents go up, young children and our seniors are impacted the most. So we are now seeing more young children and more seniors. So across the 3 counties, those two, under 18, children under 18 and adults over 55 are making up about 40% of the people experiencing homelessness. which is not what most people think. And so we still have people with mental illness, we still have people with substance use, we still have people with job loss. Unfortunately, people who have jail records are also more vulnerable to becoming homeless and staying homeless longer, and so the legislation that ends up in arresting people is counterproductive. But what I will say is that the solutions and how we reduce our numbers for seniors, for children, for everybody, is when we focus on what drives the numbers and why do some communities have more people who are homeless than others? What's different at the community level versus what makes someone who's homeless different from somebody who's housed? And we've spent way too much time in the how are homeless people different from housed people conversation, and not near enough time in the why does this community have a higher rate of homelessness than that one.
Let me just add on to that, that there are a number of different kinds of homeless people. But the amount of time that people spend homeless, has that changed at all? And what does that look like? What's the average time that someone remains homeless?
Yeah, because the housing market is the driver both of who becomes homeless, how many people become homeless, but also it's just harder to get people back into housing when you don't have the housing stock. People are remaining homeless longer. We do know that people who have disabilities, including many of the seniors, remain homeless on average longer than people who don't have disabilities, which I don't think is the kind of community we want to be. I feel very confident that when it gets down to it, nobody in this room and not many people out in the larger community would say, you know what, I'm really okay with people with disabilities sleeping outside. That's a dynamic we've created, but I don't think that's who we are, and I don't think that's who we want to be. But those are the people who spend the most time homeless.
Zeynep, are you seeing any other trends for unsheltered people in your day-to-day work? Any trends that would help us better understand what needs to be done?
Well, we're seeing basically what Martha was just talking about. I've been at Samaritan Resource Center almost 5 years now, and when I first got there, all we saw were single adults who were chronically homeless. Now, probably half of our clientele have become families with children. Senior citizens, youth, not as much youth, but a lot of senior citizens who are living on fixed incomes, and their rent goes up $500 and they can't make it. Or we even get calls sometimes from people who actually own a house and their insurance went up so high, and again, fixed income, and if that's all they have, if you're getting $1,000 a month, that's not going to get you very far in paying your $500 rent increase or $500 a month insurance. Yeah, it's just, and more families sleeping in their cars, and I think that's another invisible part of our homeless society is we don't count them because we don't know they're there. They're typically hiding because they're afraid their children are going to get taken away from them, so they don't want to come out and report. The kids end up leaving school. They're not in school because they don't know where they're going to be the next night. They're moving around in their car or they're moving from camp to camp. So we're seeing a lot of children being taken out of school because of the instability, which again impacts their mental health.
Martha, I do want to touch on this issue of homelessness versus home ownership. For about 40 years, everyone's answer to homelessness was to help people buy houses. That's not really the case anymore. Housing is not the same as home ownership.
Very correct. And I would say it's very hard to become a successful homeowner and to get a mortgage and all those kind of things if you can't document that you were a successful renter first. So much of the home ownership opportunities that are being built right now are catering to our higher income population. There's always going to be members of the community who can't afford that or maybe don't want that, but who really need rental housing. and need that support. The closest connection that we actually have is that we are not creating enough entry-level homeownership opportunities. And so that puts, so people who used to, a generation ago, would have moved out of mom and dad's or graduated college and bought their first home and moved into a home, cannot afford to do that. And they are staying in rental housing, which puts more pressure on the rental units because they're not turning over. So it actually reduces the availability of rental stock across our community. There are some wonderful programs like Habitat and others that have a niche, and they do help with a certain, income group and some opportunities. But that really, what we really need is more rental housing on a massive scale, and rental housing that can target people at very low incomes. And part of what that means is we need subsidies, because just the cost of developing a house, even if you got it mortgage free, even if you got it debt free, the cost to operate rental units or other things is such that people on a very low income can't pay enough in rent for you to operate that. We have to have subsidies to make housing affordable in our economy. There is not, even though there's a demand, there's not a way to produce the product in a way that's affordable until we have subsidies.
So one more question in this space before we broaden the conversation a little bit for both you and Zeynep is, if you know nothing about homelessness or housing, you have been inundated with headlines and discussions about shelter beds and the importance of shelter beds. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are the 3 counties or the 4 counties in the metro? What are they doing about shelter beds, and does it matter?
They're really struggling with how to get around NIMBY. Yeah. They're really struggling with what to do with the neighborhood protest. And again, I think that some of that energy is driven by, again, we're trying to figure out what makes homeless people different instead of why do we have so many homeless people. And the people who are homeless, who used to be our neighbors just 6 months ago, but are now homeless because the rent went up, all of a sudden we become afraid. One of the ramifications of the legislation and of the ordinances that have been passed to empower the legislation is you get more people getting arrested. That feeds the fear. That feeds the fear that these homeless people are criminals that we got to be afraid are going to come break into our houses. It's a very wicked, wicked cycle.
So Zeynep, that not in my backyard thing is a big deal. So even Orlando just called off their current shelter project yesterday, primarily because a group of people who said, we think this is a great idea, just not in my backyard. So is there a way to solve that problem?
Well, I don't have all the answers, but I think we make an effort to educate the public, the general public, people who don't know anything about homelessness or homeless people. I think there has got to be an effort to educate the general public about who these homeless folks are. Even if they are those who are chronically homeless and who are mentally ill or substance users, they are still people who need help, right? And if we just want to brush them under the table, then you still have families. I have clients who come to our center, who've been coming there, who are chronically homeless, who've grown up in East Orlando. So they didn't just pop up out of anywhere. It's just circumstances led to whatever happened to them. And they deserve help as much as anybody else. So I think we need to change the public's mind about who the faces of the homeless are and their stories. And really, if as a human being you don't feel like somebody should be helped because they're in that circumstance, then I think those people have to kind of look at themselves, no judgment, but kind of look in the mirror and say, why is my heart so hard? but also the families, you know, I mean, they're just being moved around, they're just coming in. Like I said before, we're seeing more and more families, which is sad in itself, but we're a drop-in center for adults, right? We have showers, and in the past year, at least half a dozen times I've had to clear our shower building of all clients and volunteers and staff so that I could have 8-year-olds take a shower. So think about, I mean, just imagine that. You have children and the parents are like, can my child take a shower? Yes, we'll clear out the building. I mean, something is wrong with that picture.
Yep. I want to broaden the discussion just a little bit because part of the issue of this is who knows what about what. And earlier this year, a group of independent journalists from the region came together through a summit to try to figure out how they could work together to go more deeply into issues like this law. So we pass a law. The question is it working? Is it not working? Will it work in the future? Do we have actual data? Who's enforcing it? Who's not enforcing it? Well, not that any of those individual journalistic organizations couldn't have done this story on their own, but they don't have the time or the resources to do it as deep as they wanted to do it. So they came together to say, what if we created this journalistic collaboration? And what if we then use this law as a pilot to go deep for 6 months and figure out, are we making a difference? Is it working? Plus, their primary focus was to figure out, how do we get information in the hands of people who are not consumers of journalism? So we live in a world where not everybody watches television, not everybody uses the internet, not everybody uses social media, but anybody who uses just one of those is not going to get the whole story, and they're not going to get as deep of a play in understanding how things are working in a community. So they came together. Meghan Stokes was one of the founders, along with Judith Smeltzer from Central Florida Public Media. And they came to the Central Florida Foundation. They said, hey, can you help us just facilitate, bring together people, and can we see if we can make a plan to get this done? We did, and it worked. And the group chose this law as their pilot, not at anyone's suggestion, but because they saw it as one of the few things going on right now that they could actually maybe change the course of how people think, act, vote, get involved in community by seeing how this solution is working or not working as it moves forward. So I gave way too much of a setup there, Meghan, but what I want to know from you is that one of the main challenges of the media collaboration is to figure out, how do we get to people who are non-users of media and journalism? And what does that look like to you?
Well, one of the beautiful things about us all getting together is that it's different types of news organizations all working together. So we're seeing print, we're seeing digital, we're seeing television working together. We all cover different communities. As Martha said, homelessness looks different in every community. So being able to not only dive deep into the issues that are in our community, but to meet regularly and look at the gaps that we're seeing in the information that people are getting, and then strategically addressing those so that we're not two organizations are not working on the same story. Really, what's the use in that when it frees up another organization to go do something meaningful in this space that we otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to do. So I think having that information available on the various platforms and really explaining what we're doing, offering a real layer of transparency that you don't always see in the media, I think could go a long way in bringing in audiences who maybe have become disengaged with the news. And then the hope is that you have a more informed public to make those important decisions.
So I'm interested, Martha and Zeynep, if we talked earlier about this kind of hardening of people's feelings about the homelessness, of the homeless in Central Florida, whether or not information provided in more depth with better understanding, if you think that might help in this situation, and what messages would you be communicating to people if you had the opportunity to educate them about something? What would you be educating them about?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist, so I think if we educate more people, I think they're going to care. Everybody's going to care to a different degree, but they will care. I think we need to, what we've started doing at Samaritan Resource Center we started having town hall meetings. Once a month we have a town hall at a nearby church because we don't have enough space where we are. And we invite everyone. We invite all the local businesses. We invite the residents who live around us, who live in East Orlando, really anywhere in East Orlando. We've invited all the churches, the ones that we can get in touch with, just trying to engage more and more of the community so that we can educate them about the extent of the issue and educate them about the lack of resources and maybe engage them in solutions. I hope that makes sense, because if people don't know that there is no shelter in East Orlando, they don't know there's no shelter in East Orlando. So it's easy enough to say, why don't they just go to a shelter, right? But when they find out, they're like, oh, really? There's no shelter? No, there is no shelter. I mean, so I think a lot of it is marketing. Marketing is the word I use, is educating everybody.
Yep. Martha, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the education can make a difference, and it just takes a long time to get the messaging out and absorbed, especially if the messaging is counter to what people expect the messaging to be. And so when we talk about that numbers are driven by housing, not by a sudden increase of mental illness, that's not really what people were prepared to hear. And so it just takes longer. I love Z's and bringing up that people may not be aware that we don't have shelters everywhere. And folks get frustrated when people who are experiencing homelessness don't act the way they think they should act. So common thing, even if there was a shelter bed, this guy, if you ask him, will you go if I take you to a shelter tonight? And he says no. And you're like, what's wrong with him? Why wouldn't he do that? I think I would do that if that's where I was. Well, he's got a dog. And so then some folks were like, it's just a dog and you don't have a place, a roof over your head. You need to prioritize. Well, that dog is also his security when he's on the streets. So when he's sleeping outside, if somebody with bad intent comes towards him, that dog is going to let him know. That dog is, in his head, critical to his survival. So if I go into the shelter and then they boot me out a week later and I gave up my dog, I don't have my dog. That's pretty smart in my book. Like, I don't want to be out on the streets without some protection. One of the saddest stories we have was one of our outreach team talking about how they were having to teach a 72-year-old woman who was homeless for the first time where she could sleep safely. She has a dog, but she can't get into the shelter because she has a dog. But that dog can keep her more safely on the streets. If I've downsized, if I lost my apartment, I've gotten rid of so many things, but I've got 2 great big garbage bags of things that I just couldn't part with yet because I already gave up all these other things that my identity is wrapped in, through, and around. And I really want to take my belongings, but yet we don't have a place that lets people bring a lot of belongings with them. So there's even with the places that we have, even if they had capacity, there's still going to be someone who says, no, I'm not going to go. It doesn't work for me. And the education is in helping people understand why that's not really necessarily a bad decision. It makes sense to that person at that time with the information they have and under their current circumstances. So we need more options. We need more options so that everybody can have a safe place.
So Meghan, are these kinds of stories in the mix of the work that's being done by the collaborative right now?
Well, we've produced about, last time I checked, 34 stories so far since January 1st. That's when the whole project started. And we've covered a lot of these issues, but we're about halfway through the project. It's supposed to be a 6-month project. And the last meeting we had, we really dove into the types of data that we could request so that we can look at trends like you were talking about, how you know, you see rents go up, and then you also see the number of children and seniors who are experiencing homelessness go up. So looking at those trends is going to be one of the next steps. But I think solutions have also been included in our reporting, which I think is really important to talk about and offer to people and explore. And I really think that looking at the faces of homelessness and really, you know, shining a light on that would be very powerful as well. So we still have a lot of work to do, but it's exciting to have partners in this big job.
So one of the issues with homelessness that's difficult is that there's a systemic kind of way to look at it, and then there's the street level way to look at it. So the League of Women Voters has like 750 members out there, and if you had some ideas about what you think they could do or should do or what their next steps might be, I'd love to hear from each of you where you think members of the League of Women Voters could get involved.
If anyone proposes a shelter or affordable housing in your community, you be at the front of the line saying yes. And you talk to your neighbors and help engage them and bring in Zeynep, bring in, you know, Eric, bring in Scott. Help your neighbors understand why they don't need to be afraid of this. Hands down, one of the most important things that people across the county can do, hands down.
Be an ambassador for solutions.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like it. Meghan, any thoughts?
I think one of the only asks I would really have is if you have questions or input, things that you would like to see our collaboration tackle, please reach out to me or other leaders on the project and let us know, because this is something that we did to help the community, and you are the community, so we want it to reflect the needs and like I said, really dive into those solutions.
And I would just remind for the rest of you, whenever you see a story produced by the collaborative, it identifies that it was produced by a member of the collaborative and gives you a link to be able to go and see all the other stories that have been done, right? And also be able to see the work and the members of the collaborative that are doing the work. So whether you read it in the Sentinel or you see it on television or you come across it in a social media or in what I would call a more independent, direct journalistic endeavor, you'll be able to see who's involved in getting that done. Zeynep, what could the League of Women Voters do for you?
Advocate, advocate, advocate. Be an ambassador, as Martha said. Educate everybody else that you know. Educate your neighbors, educate whatever, your garden club members, educate your church members, whoever you can come into contact with, please advocate. That's really what we need so that we don't get the pushback. Not just for shelters, but we get phone calls every day about the homeless camps and about homeless people being out there. And we go out and serve them with our outreach team. But maybe if people knew how to help them, they wouldn't just be so quick to jump on 311 and make a phone call and say, there's a homeless camp nearby, get them to move. Let's get people involved. Let's get the community involved in helping solve the problem.
And I would say, talk to your elected officials, because this is a job that has to be done by all three sectors of the economy. It can't just be delegated to one sector or one group of people who are trying to do what are crisis-based work as opposed to systems-based solution work. Martha?
Let's just say one other thing, along the same lines, but as I said earlier, people are becoming homeless in every single district, in every jurisdiction, and across the three counties, and certainly here in Orange County. Every city, every district of the county. If we could have small shelters that just took care of the people that had become homeless from that place, from that district, across, then no one would have to share an unequal burden. There's ways for us to do this that are fair, but that honor the fact that, as I said before, these are your previous neighbors. They were in your neighborhood, and the housing cost did something so that they're no longer able to live there. There's no reason to be afraid of bringing people who were previously in your neighborhood back to your neighborhood.
Good. So I'm going to turn this over to you now as we think about what we might want to know that I didn't ask or they didn't mention in the discussion. And I have a mic partner here somewhere who I think, there she is, Pat. Good to see you. I'm going to turn it over to Pat so she can guide you through the question and answer period.
Okay, we do have some rules. No speeches, just questions, and you need to be a member, and please introduce yourself. And I do keep hold of the mic.
Hi, Gloria Picard, President Emerita of the League. I was so disappointed when I saw the results of the work release facility for the Orange County Jail not being approved. So my question to you is, what do you think would have happened if 20 or 30 League of Women Voters of Orange County members had shown up to speak in favor of that vote? And beyond that, is it too late? I would ask all of you.
I would just say I think that decision was complicated by the potential cost of the renovations. I think there was more than one thing driving that decision. But yes, absolutely showing up at the community meetings, giving some balance to the comments that are being made. There were people from more than 5 miles away from that proposed location who were weighing in that, you know, it was not just people right around there. But yes, absolutely. When, you know, it's kind of like if you go to the restaurant and they're like, you can take a survey and tell us what you thought. You know, if you're happy, you don't bother to take the survey. You had a bad experience. I'm on there. I'm taking the, you know, I'm telling them exactly what I think. You know, so disproportionately, people who are afraid come to those meetings, and folks who are like, oh, okay, they're not there. So absolutely, coming would make a difference.
I would add that, you know, as a journalist, we are unbiased. We don't go one way or another, but I'm a huge proponent for civic engagement. And I think if you feel strongly on an issue, even though you think it's been decided, you should still speak to your elected leaders about it, because if they know that this is something a lot of their constituents feel powerfully toward, they might, you know, have their radar on to other solutions, and maybe we'll work with you there.
I once presented a video of the changing face of poverty in my home back in 2012 or 13. and this is really more directed at Meghan, is most of the stories print? And is there any idea behind creating a video that makes real the faces of homelessness so that that video can be used in discussion groups, whether they be in a home, a community center, the league groups, whatever, churches?
So let me just make sure I understand your question. So you're asking if we're planning to, in some way, sort of condense the reporting into...
Well, what this was showing the differences, the different people that were impacted by poverty. Matter of fact, Pat was at that particular showing, and it showed that these people are not the food stamp recipients, that they look more like you, me, you know, just the very things you're describing. Only this was 2011 or 10 when the actual documentary was made. So if you're saying the faces change, why not show the faces, tell the stories of the very people, and show them that they're real rather than print? Print, it only gets so far. There's nothing more powerful and impactful than the visual of real people.
You make a great point. Can definitely talk about that as a potential. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine Kennedy, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm really proud that there is a consortium of journalists who are collaborating. And I wonder if you can get advertising agencies who work pro bono to communicate these pictures that you're talking about, to put the faces of the homeless in front of people, and to start doing the communication that you're making this real. Advertising does a lot, as we know. It's, I don't know who's funding this, but certainly if advertising people can do some pro bono work, they could also get the printers, they could do a lot. That's all I wanted to say.
No, that's a really good point, and it's right now it's just each individual organization. I don't want to say volunteering, but you know, we're using our existing resources to do this additional work. Happy to do it because it's something that the community cares about and is passionate about. But I think you make an excellent point that you know, additional funding and support could make a huge difference in what we're able to do and how many people know about it.
Right, it's the distribution that's so...
Thank you.
Hi, Maria Sanchez, real estate developer. Pat, I know we said no speeches, but I'm going to be really quick. So I am the long-term solution to what we are talking about here. As a real estate developer, I have approached city officials with my intent, willingness, and desire to help in affordable housing. There are subsidies out there. There's the home grant, there's the block grant that are being used. I even went to the extent of going to one of their meetings. In that meeting, I found out how the funds were being distributed. They're being distributed for crisis situations, short-term goals. Yes, that's great, we need that. But I sat in their meeting and I said, hey, I am your long-term solution. These are my ideas. I have the crews, I have the plans, I have the desire to do it. And they all said, oh, that's a great idea. Someone should do that. And so my question to you is, how can I bridge that gap with our local politicians, our local government, so that I can do this for the community? Because it is a long-term solution of creating subsidized housing.
There are some funds, absolutely, and some of those grants can be used for more than one purpose. You know, so they could be used for construction, they could be used for rental assistance, you know, et cetera. However, as one of our colleagues said, when you put $10 billion towards a $150 billion problem, it looks like, you know, you can say we just wasted that money. You know, the problem at this point, we have allowed our housing market to get so out of control that it requires more funding than what's currently available. But yes, you're going to the right people, and so you have to pay attention to, sometimes I put out an RFP and it's just for rental assistance, and other times I put out one and it is for construction, and so you just got to kind of, stay on top of that. Some of those dollars can only be used by nonprofits, some can't be used for, there's all kinds of, hoops to jump through. But the reality is that, the county population grew between 2010 and 2020, the population grew 25%. People want to live here. We're a fast-growing group, which is fantastic. The housing stock grew a little bit less than 15%. It is a numbers game, right? So until the community can invest in housing and transportation to the same level that the population is growing, we will continue to see more people experiencing homelessness. So, what we can point to is that those rental assistance dollars absolutely keep some people, we get people into housing with that, we keep people in housing with that. I don't care what you do, you're not gonna be able to build cheap enough without having some additional subsidy in there to make it affordable. So we need both. And candidly, many of our jurisdictions are just kind of caught having to choose. We need it for this, we need it for that, we need it for this, and all of those work towards the solution, but we just don't have enough money to do any of them at the level that we need.
Hi, I'm Lisa Adkins with the League, and read your newsletter. That's me. I am wondering about, with the impending doom of Medicaid cuts, and it seems like the current administration is certainly going to make those cuts. What are, let's say, the local health organizations? Have you heard any murmurings from them of what will happen? Because I would presume that the elderly that find themselves homeless because of Medicaid cuts are going to start showing up at our hospital, emergency rooms, etc. Are the local health care corporations communicating with all of you?
We get a lot of calls with people asking us where can they send people for help. We get a lot of those calls. Our challenge is that those places are out of capacity, right? So we can tell you where the places are that give help. That doesn't mean they've got the help to give anymore. Certainly the hospitals are aware of what will happen with these cuts, as they move forward. And we're all concerned that it's going to mean more seniors on our streets. And we haven't figured out a good solution for the seniors population that we've already got on our streets. So it could, again, change the profiles of people who are becoming homeless.
Sorry, I have to close this. I thought you told me to shut it down.
You want to go for a few more minutes?
What a way to cut. No, thanks. Bill Ruder by Roto, and I've been on the board of SRC since pretty much when it started. And Z has been an absolute, like you said, Mark, and she's amazing, and has done so many different things with what was a drop-in center, what we're doing and what she's been doing to equip people. When I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, if you can, about the kinds of wins that we're getting when it comes to folks that are actually feeling enough hope to be able to go to Valencia or to go to start to get up to speed so that they can actually be independent. And how is that working, and to what else can we do to help that move? Does that make sense? Make it up, no, whatever.
I'll try to answer.
But no, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, one of the programs we have is working with Valencia's Accelerated Skills Training program so that we can, so that there are some options for those who have no jobs and no income at all. It's one way to at least get them employment, get them into the job market, and have income so that they can at least rent a room somewhere and get them out of homelessness. Again, yes, it's helpful in some ways. We've had people graduate and get housed and get stabilized. It's just without enough housing, without enough housing stock, it's still an uphill battle. But that's one of the things that we've been looking at, is trying to get people increased income so that they can afford something rather than have nothing else, no options.
Across our region, we've got more than 1,600 folks, long-term people who had been homeless a long time and who have a disability. We've got them into permanent housing, and we have a greater than 90% retention rate. The partnerships that we have between the agencies in this community, we know we're getting good outcomes. We just don't have the capacity we need to do it with everyone who would benefit.
Sorry. I'm Susan Morris. I'm a league member, and I've worked on housing for 50 years, off and on in different ways, originally in organizations, later individually with families. To me, when I started in looking at it, as I think you said, Margaret, that how the unhoused were in basically three categories: those who had lost their homes or jobs, those who had drug or some kind of addiction, and then those who had mental issues. And I don't know how those percentages have changed over the years, but I felt like after the Reagan administration, we got rid of facilities that we could have and help people, like many countries in other parts of the world, Europe have, when people have mental issues or addiction issues, that we can help them without having giant financial to them. You know, either the wealthy can have it, but those who don't have it. And the United States, to me, has given that up. But the other thing on housing, for instance, what you're saying about the limited housing that we have, St. Petersburg, the mayor of St. Petersburg, I'm working on 2 projects over there now, has given one project. They're not giant, they're not 300, 400 units, but they're 100 to 200 units. It's given $5 million to one. It's given $7 million to another. We've got to get, right now, affordable housing is done with federal money, and they have to apply for a grant, and it takes over a year to year and a half. Most people don't want to have their properties go under contract, and you don't know if it's going to close for 2 years because you don't know if they're going to win the grant. So we've got to come up with another way. Locally, I feel, with counties and cities and municipalities to help in that regard. And I don't know if there's anything being done locally like that right now in our area, like there is over in the West Coast.
Most nonprofit developers that I work with tell me it takes usually about 12 funding sources to complete a project. And so they're getting federal dollars, they're getting state dollars, they're getting local dollars, they're getting a grant, they're getting this, that, or the other. And that is a nightmare because you got to work them all together. They don't all have the same requirements. Sometimes the requirements fight each other. What's really helpful is to have, I don't care if it's a federal pot or a state, but have one pot contribute really the bulk of the funding. That ensures more stability. That ensures that things, can move better. But the biggest funder of affordable housing across the country is the tax credits. And the tax credits right now are in quite a bit of flux in terms of how much there are fewer folks who want to play in that system because they think their taxes are getting ready to go down, and so they don't need the tax credits. And so there's less money in that system right now.
All right, I want to say thank you to our panel, and I'd love for you to give them a round of applause as they return to their tables. Now, I want you all to stay seated for a few minutes because I'm going to bring back up Jane Hirsch, who's going to share with you some league announcements that you need to know about. Thank you all very much.
Mark, thank you so much for giving direction and heart to the panel. Ladies, Zeynep, Meghan, Martha, thank you so much for your heart and what you are doing in the city on all of our behalf. That's really humbling, isn't it? I hope you all learned something new to take away that's a very personal detail to you, to be able to share this reality with others. For instance, 40% of those experiencing homelessness are now under the age of 18 or senior citizens. Are you kidding? Why are we all still sitting down? We should be outraged and we should be a part of this just as a good neighbor who wants a healthy neighborhood. A few calls to action. For members of the League of Women Voters of Orange County, to volunteer, we ask that you would visit the volunteer page on the League website to see how you can help. In fact, maybe even consider what first drove you or motivated you to join the League in the first place. And are you now a part of the solution that is meeting that challenge that prompted you to join? I can think of no better time than Women's History Month for you to launch your Democratic origin story. For today's event, for our hot topics, I ask that you would please note the QR code. Is there one? There it is, magic, thank you. If you would please, before you leave, just take a shot of that and fill out the survey, just a few questions. And campaign yard signs are being returned for recycling to the firehouse on Howell Branch, Firehouse 64. It's actually across the street from where Temple dumps into Howell Branch. That's through Saturday, so get them in the next couple of days, please. The legislature is in session. Following bills and making your voice heard is so important. You can sign up for alerts and sharing lists by checking out our upcoming newsletter. Is that correct, Lisa? Yes? Thank you very much. So look in the newsletter, please. Indifference is not an option. We need to stand up. We need to show up. We need to stand for the vulnerable and the marginalized. And we know that our community is not ever going to be truly healthy until we have all of our neighbors properly housed and all of the services available to them to recognize their dignity as a human being. Call and email your representatives. You can do this over and over and over and over. There is work to be done as the League moves forward. We all have a part to play to empower voters and defend democracy. Please join us. We've got some upcoming events. The DEIA, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility, Say the Words. Social Justice Book Club is March 19th at 7 o'clock. They are reading The Barn, The Secret History of Murder in Mississippi, the second part. If you're not necessarily a part of the book club, I just want to encourage you, that is a good, hard, necessary read. If you would like to join up, I don't see Alicia here today, but if you notify maybe or get in touch with Marilyn Baldwin or Virginia Meany, they are the co-chairs, or, sorry about that, Jill. Raise your hand, Jill, if you'd like to be a part of that. The Spring League Showcase and new member welcome is March 25th at 6. It'll be at the Winter Park Community Center, and that's in Hannibal Square. If you're a member, actually we invite all members to come and help the new members feel welcome, but particularly those of you who might have the gift of hospitality, and you are particularly gifted in coming along to make these new members feel welcome. The 6th Annual Women's History Month Breakfast is March 28th from 8 to 10. It's hosted downtown by the Central Florida Regional Historical Center, and that's where it's going to be too. So if you go on their website, there's a registration for that if you'd like to join us on that day. There is no Hot Topics overtime today, and actually there is no April Hot Topics either, per se. But we're mixing it up a little bit for next month, and we are going to actually have our annual meeting in lieu of the Hot Topics luncheon. We're going to try and mix it up and see if we can get lots of people involved for the planning meeting. Our keynote speaker will be Orange County Supervisor, excuse me, do you have some water? No? I'm not a grandma yet, but I remember my grandma having this issue too. Thank you, Charlie. Our keynote speaker is going to be the Supervisor of Elections, Karen Castor-Dental. She's also a league member. And the public is welcome, although the only people who will be able to address and vote on the issues will be members. But if you really, really have a hankering to vote, you're welcome to become a member between now and then. And that's it. Thank you for joining us. Drive home safely. Take care.